The end has come for KADYROV'S Chechnya. Putin's Caucasian infantryman RAMZAN is getting ready to meet Kobzon, Chechnya. On the verge of a grand explosion, the clans are already sharpening their knives for the battle for the throne. There is no heir, no plan, and no Russian army either. Who will hold the Caucasus after the dictator's death? Is Dagestan next after Chechnya? The Kremlin is terrified instead of having stability, massacre, and a second front inside Russia. This is the end of an era. Why will RAMZAN'S death become Putin's main catastrophe? Let's break it down right now. Watch until the end. My respects. This is Ukraine Today. I am Andrei Silakov bringing you the hottest news. It seems there will soon be new arrivals in hell. Ramzan Kadyrov, the immortal Gauleiter of Chechnya, is fading fast. It's impossible to hide this, not even with TikTok filters. A swollen face, severe shortness of breath, and a cane without which the fearsome dictator can no longer move. Insiders confirm his kidneys are failing, his body is falling apart. Kadyrov himself understands this too. In his recent interviews, he openly says that he doesn't want to live to old age.
I don't want to live to old age. I want to leave this life while still loved and respected by everyone.
But for the Kremlin, his death is not just the loss of a loyal dog. It's the beginning of the end of control over the Caucasus. For decades, Putin bought peace in Chechnya with massive subsidies, while Kadyrov kept the region in fear. Now he is fading, and Moscow is running out of money. Experts are blunt about it. A power vacuum in Grozny will blow up the entire region. Ingushetia, Dagestan. Everywhere there, hatred toward Moscow and Kadyrov's lawlessness has been building up. The system of money in exchange for loyalty is broken. Putin trapped himself in this situation. Now Ramzan is leaving behind scorched earth and thousands of blood enemies. As a result, the Chechens will fight for power, while the Kremlin will panic, trying to put out the fire in the south. The empire starts to crumble at its weakest links.
I would say that a power vacuum in Chechnya is very dangerous for Putin, because of the potential emergence of movements in the North Caucasus. And Kadyrov has so far been the glue holding them back. The North Caucasus is full of people who harbor various grievances against the federal center in Moscow and the growing Russification of their own regions.
But the scariest thing for Russia is the lack of a plan B. Who should be put on the throne? 18-year-old Adam Kadyrov, who only knows how to beat up unarmed people in detention centers and get into car accidents. Chechen clans and elders will never accept the rule of a teenager. But even if they somehow turned a blind eye to his age, Adam's condition after the serious car accident in Grozny turned out to be worse than expected. At first, doctors were saving his ruptured spleen, but now a much more interesting truth has come to light. Severe traumatic brain injury. The symptoms suddenly worsened, and instead of the promised 4 weeks, the treatment will drag on for months. The Kremlin doctors are in a panic. The successor's brain was damaged more severely than they thought. And the dynasty has been decapitated at the most critical moment.
A week ago, they said that the consequences of the traumatic brain injury did not appear immediately. They are not going away, and no one is making any predictions. And the treatment, which was initially expected to take 4 weeks, may now last for months, a source reported. He noted that information about Adam Kadyrov's condition is being kept extremely secret. Unprecedented measures are being taken at the hospital to prevent any leaks.
To save the dictator's son, an entire wing in a Moscow hospital was cleared out. And they wheel him through the corridors with a disco. The security uses special devices with flashes so that no one can record the patient's actual condition on video. The Kadyrov clan has been decapitated twice. The father is barely alive and the only heir is out of commission at the most critical moment. This is the collapse of the dynasty, and Chechen clans can already smell blood.
Both wings are connected by a long passageway. If the 9th wing has been cleared of other patients, there are still some in the 8th. Kadyrov's security is extremely worried that when he is transported for examination to the 8th wing, one of the patients might record a video. That's why a guard always accompanies the stretcher with the patient, carrying a device that constantly produces something like flashes. This device prevents anyone from taking photos or videos. The medical staff themselves jokingly call every transfer of Adam between buildings a light show.
For the first time in a long while, Ramzan Kadyrov decided to comment on the situation with his son's car accident. But to put it mildly, it turned out to be rather foolish. Instead of the truth, everyone heard nonsense. It turns out the accident involving Adam was supposedly created by artificial intelligence. Foaming at the mouth, Kadyrov insists that this is a fabrication and complains that the world is discussing his son instead of the dry statistics of car accidents in Russia. With
the help of artificial intelligence, anyone can be deceived. There have been 128,000 accidents in the country, 13,009 people have died, but no one cares about that.
Russian media are playing along as well. Outlets keep showing old footage of Adam, passing it off as recent.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
But as soon as RAMZAN'S heart stops, a Game of Thrones will begin in the region. The clans that have endured humiliation and repression for years will start a bloody battle for power and for resources. It will be a war within Russia, shootouts, explosions, and a redistribution of property. And here Putin's main problem is revealed. He doesn't have the troops to stop it. The National Guard, the FSB, the army, all of them are currently deployed in Ukraine. To pull divisions from the front to pacify Chechnya would be capitulation. Leaving everything as it is would mean losing the Caucasus.
Different groups might decide that the chosen successor is not the best option. And they might try to play by their own rules, given their habits, possible shootouts, explosions, and murders.
The Kadyrov era is sinking, and with it, the Kremlin's entire control over the Caucasus. Chechnya is now a powder keg, with the fuse burning down in sync with RAMZAN'S kidneys. Years of accumulated clan hatred are about to explode in a massacre that Moscow simply will not be able to physically stop. The entire army is bogged down in Ukraine. How will the death of the tyrant become a signal for the start of war within Russia? Watch the report.
The end of power, TikTok ruler Kadyrov is losing his position.
It's me again, with my phone again.
The health of the head of Chechnya has rapidly deteriorated, and this was immediately reflected in the appearance of Putin's vassal. From an athletic, muscular and self-assured man, Kadyrov is turning into a helpless, constantly tired and sick old man. For several years, the head of Chechnya has been seriously ill, as evidenced by his unhealthy appearance and his regular disappearances from the public eye. He stopped working out, which had always played a big role in his image, and started wearing looser, baggier clothes. And Don started appearing in public less often, even though he used to love being the center of attention. Salam alaikum.
It's us again. An interesting life. Life can be interesting sometimes.
Simply put, Kadyrov doesn't have much time left. His rule is apparently coming to an end.
It started with repressions within Chechnya itself. Because of this, even in the public sphere, it became completely forbidden to raise the topic of his poor health, Kadyrov. And now people are in such a state that they're afraid to express your thought. But do they talk about this, say, in kitchens, so to speak? Yes, of course. In Chechnya, quite a few clans. Yes, most of them are affiliated in one way or another with the Kadyrov clan.
Who will replace Don? The question remains open. Essentially, the main successor is considered to be Kadyrov's son, 18-year-old Adam. But a barrier to his election is the constitutional restriction that requires the head of Chechnya to be over 30 years old. Another possible option is appointing a person loyal to Kadyrov as the head of Chechnya.
In Moscow, as far as we can tell right now, again, by analyzing the public sphere, there are their own candidates to replace Kadyrov. But for now, these are still being considered as working options, and at the same time, they are looking for a person who, on the one hand, understands the local specifics, and on the other hand, is closely connected, let's say, in close working relationships. This is primarily focused on working with the FSB, specifically within the established FSB line of command, and finding someone who is capable of building a Putin-centric position. In other words, to continue doing the very same activities that Kadyrov himself was doing.
Moscow's main requirement for Ramzan Kadyrov's successor. Chechnya must not become a problem again, especially during the war with Ukraine.
Now, it is highly probable that Moscow will utilize every available resource and strategy to suppress any civil demonstrations by the local population in Chechnya, as well as any potential attempts by Chechnya to gain its own sovereign legal subjectivity. This approach will include the use of overwhelming force and will likely be carried out through uncompromising and violent crackdowns against the people.
What will happen next in Chechnya is unknown. Some political analysts believe that Kadyrov's death could lead to a power struggle between clans and mass protests.
This could cause major destabilization in the North Caucasus. Basically because There is already tension now between Chechnya and Dagestan, Chechnya and Ingushetia. And of course, when Kadyrov dies, this confrontation could sharply intensify. And all the grievances that Chechnya's neighbors have had could be brought up again. That's why destabilization in this region is very, very likely.
According to the Institute for the Study of War, the death of the Chechen dictator or his departure from office, if it happens during or immediately after the end of the war in Ukraine, could leave Putin's interests unprotected. In the North Caucasus, unless he appoints an appropriate successor,
Things aren't easy in Western Russia either. Belgorod is plunging into an ice age. In the city, people are left without heat, and this is a fitting harsh boomerang for the attempts to freeze Ukrainians. But the most telling things are happening in the provinces. There haven't been any strikes there, but the cities are freezing on their own. While the Kremlin spends trillions on the war, their own heating systems are simply crumbling to dust. Why can't the great energy superpower survive a regular winter? And how are Russians paying for their dictator's ambitions with cold? Find out in our report.
bitter frosts have hit Moscow. Utility workers across the country can't cope with the snowfall. Meanwhile, in Russian-occupied Donetsk, people are happy about the snow because they can melt it. It can be used to wash dishes and flush the toilet.
No one is happier about the snowy weather. She shows off the supplies she's managed to melt. This is how the woman deals with the long-term lack of water. There hasn't been any for more than 3 months now.
Russia continues its energy terror. Putin has once again ordered ballistic strikes on Ukraine to leave Ukrainians without heat and electricity. In 20-degree frost.
The energy truce is over. Russia has resumed targeted strikes on energy infrastructure and residential areas. Russia is bombing all regions of Ukraine, from east to west, from north to south. Ukraine has no choice but to strike back at the enemy's energy sector. Locals reported that the Belgorod CHP and the Frunzensky electrical substation were hit. Gladkov acknowledged the severe consequences of the strikes on Belgorod's energy infrastructure.
Currently, we have a very large amount of significant damage to the critical energy infrastructure within the city of Belgorod. Wow.
The blast wave.
Once again, the Luch CHP was also attacked. There are power and heating outages in Belgorod. Radiators in homes are bursting and leaking en masse. Governor Gladkov reported that efforts to restore the city's power supply have not yielded the desired results. They have started draining water from the systems.
This is an extremely difficult period. Once again, we will have to get through this together. In
the city, a partial evacuation has begun. It's not just Belgorod. All of Russia has felt the impact of this winter. In Penza, there was a sudden blackout and the water supply disappeared. The official authorities did not announce the reason. Obviously, it was yet another karmic blow. Chita in the Transbaikal region exploded and started smoking. The local CHP plant.
Things are really tough there. Everything is burning there, everything is flickering.
The Far East, the border with China. The authorities in Blagoveshchensk reported problems at their CHP plant to the federal authorities. It urgently needs fuel modernization. Otherwise, there will be a blackout. And this is already the REC sister plant, which is powered by St. Petersburg. In St. Petersburg itself, electricity and heating were lost in one of the districts due to an accident on the worn-out heating network. Some residents also lost hot water while it was below freezing outside. And the residents of Chelyabinsk were left without heat in 30-degree frost.
Today it's even worse here. The whole building is already covered in ice.
The accident happened on the heating main, the sewage system froze, radiators and pipes burst. The Russian crisis is the result of years of infrastructure deterioration and underfunding of public utilities. Putin chose to fund the war instead of developing his country and correcting the mistakes of years of rule. Murmansk looks like a set for an apocalyptic movie. Pipes burst in apartment buildings.
Right now we are heading up to the very first floor, where there is absolutely no light to be found at all.
The power went out in Severomorsk as well. By the way, this city is the main base of the Northern Fleet of the Russian Federation.
But at least there's the Northern Lights.
The real cause of the accident was the outdated supports of Rossetti, which are state-owned and responsible for transmitting electricity across the country. In addition to delivering electricity, the company is responsible for repairing power line supports, wires, and emergency restoration work. Residents of the Russian city of Engels, from where planes take off to bomb Ukraine, were left in sub-zero temperatures without heat. For a whole week there was... In Russia, more than 80% of all electricity transmission infrastructure is worn out. Their power system was built in the 1970s and 80s, and now it's difficult to upgrade it because of sanctions. The money meant for modernizing the electrical grid ends up in the manager's pockets, while electricity rates keep rising. But as for...
What kind of utility bills did they get? 12, 20, even 30,000 for equipment. And that's, excuse me, for just 40 to 50 square meters.
33,829. How is that even possible? In
the Moscow suburb of Tushino, a substation simply exploded due to overvoltage. To prevent such incidents from happening all over Putin's Russia, the entire power system needs to be modernized. But that would require at least 10 trillion rubles. Well, the Kremlin decided to spend that kind of money on the war with Ukraine last year. That's why blackouts will continue.
Meanwhile, the situation in the occupied regions is no better. Donetsk, once one of the richest cities in Ukraine, is freezing to death. There's no water, no heating, and now people are being prepared for forced deportation to Russia instead of the promised prosperity. Russians simply destroyed all the infrastructure and left behind ruins. Local residents have become hostages to the cold and Moscow's indifference. Why did the so-called rescuers bring the region to a humanitarian catastrophe, and what awaits people next? Watch in the report.
If you want to see what the Russian world really is, you need to see this. At least one video from Donetsk occupied by Russia. But not the ones shown by Kremlin representatives, the real ones.
To what extent have things deteriorated that people are scooping up water straight from the asphalt from a burst sewer? We
just stopped getting water. It simply hasn't been coming for a month and a half now. I don't know, honestly, it's just a mess. I don't know, I really don't know what to do without water anymore. It's impossible. It's impossible to live without water. There's none at all, not even a drop. Not here, not outside, not at home, not outside, not in the basement, nowhere. We just can't get any water seriously in the 21st century.
What Russia is doing to Donbas isn't even a crime, it's destruction. The destruction of our Donbas. And what are they trying to do? What kind of thing are they trying to build for themselves? That's something else really secondary. They've seized this land, and no matter what happens there, no matter how bad things get, they won't compare it to pre-war times in Ukraine. They're creating a new reality where you either live if you want or die if you don't. That's how it is.
Once one of the most expensive cities in Ukraine has turned into ruins. Poverty, fear for your life, the absence of a normal existence, teetering on the edge of a humanitarian catastrophe, and an unprecedented darkness.
I don't know if there's a road anywhere that's worse than this. It's just potholes and ruts everywhere here.
Listen, this is already something out of science fiction. So at 19 Razbornaya, I went to a friend's place, got some water, did my laundry. And in the end, I got stuck in the elevator because there's no electricity. Come on, guys.
It is quite simple. The devastation of war and the ancient ruins. But most importantly, We have the Grand Palace and the royal wedding ceremony. Why don't you come on over and step right in?
In Donetsk, there is a shortage of both drinking and utility water, and heating is partially unavailable, which leads to problems with the sewage system. Putin wanted to save the people of Donbas, but after occupying Ukrainian territories, he simply gave up on them.
We're supplying part of the water and some more from our backup reservoirs, but for now there's still not enough water.
Now in the so-called DPR, deaths are being recorded among people who have become victims of the water crisis. Due to the lack of water, it's mostly elderly people living alone and people with disabilities who are dying. The situation is becoming so critical that in Russia, they have started talking about an evacuation of the local population from Donetsk planned by the head of the so-called DPR, Pushilin, by the summer of 2026 due to the same huge problems with infrastructure.
The head of the DPR continues to insist that some residents of Donetsk will have to be evacuated for the summer because of water problems. Moscow has set the task of avoiding such a scenario, but the authorities of the republic admit that for now, they don't know how to do it.
But experts are convinced that this is unlikely, since the majority of the Donbas population are pensioners, and for the Russian authorities, there is no point in evacuating them.
A dry summer would just be an incredible challenge. What can we say about summer when even now I am talking to with acquaintances, friends in Makivka and Donetsk, and just recently for 2 weeks they simply had no water at all, literally on a not so bad schedule. Now there's a new problem in the electricity system. The voltage is 160 to 170. So those who installed a voltage regulator or some devices are kind of in a better position. Basically, those who live in their own houses and have money are the ones who benefit. And they can somehow arrange their daily life in this system of general decline. And in this system, evacuation might also be possible. But evacuation of whom, honestly, I don't quite understand. There aren't that many young people there. There are about 2 million pensioners. Are you talking about the working age population somewhere in the interior regions of Russia? Well, maybe. We'll see.
The problems in Donetsk have been going on for a long time. But the colder the winter gets, the less people shout about their love for Russia. Despite heavy snowfall, the water situation still hasn't improved. In some villages, there is no water at all, for months.
The time is 7:33. The faucet is silent. The whole settlement has been practically without water for the 3rd month now.
The struggle for survival in Donbas has been made even harder by the frost because people can't even get water from the barrels standing out on the streets.
Our settlement, Nash Zavod, Kalantai Street, February 1st, 2026. The nearest barrel is at 45 Kalantai. Residents have already reported that the faucet is frozen. Please do not turn it. And accordingly,
turn it.
So don't turn it, there's no water anyway. People have gone out searching for water, trying to get some.
People are literally forced to melt snow just to wash themselves or do the dishes.
Thank goodness there's snow outside. This is how we get water for ourselves. Technical water. Or I don't even know what to call it.
If in winter people can at least somehow be saved by snow, then the hot summer could finish off any remaining chances of survival. Pushilin himself has already admitted that the situation with the internal reservoirs is close to critical. And he stated that the Donbas water pipeline only supplies them with 25 to 30% of their needs. He went
into the house.
The humanitarian catastrophe is turning what was once a leading city with a population of 1 million and thriving industry into a ghost town.
You see, they almost never even bother to take out the trash. And running water is only ever supplied twice a week, for a mere 2 to 3 hours at the very best. So, well, it's hard to even tell how many people are left there now. Half of the pre-war population, maybe a third. And maybe only a third of the pre-war population is actually Ukrainian. If you count newcomers, maybe it adds up to half. So Donetsk, it has dramatically and rapidly lost its historical significance, its influence, and its overall power. all its unique features, so to speak. The mines are close, both Zashatko and Skachinsky. The Donetsk metallurgical plant is not operating. The situation with water has become bad and hopeless. It was already bad by April 2022.
And it's worth noting that from 2014 to 2022, for 8 years, despite the shelling of Donbas, water was still coming to Donetsk from Ukrainian territory via the Siversky Donetsk-Donbas Canal. In 2022, when Putin launched the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the filtration stations, dams, and the canal were destroyed. They were destroyed specifically by the Russian army. That is why, since the start of the full-scale invasion, life in Donetsk has become unbearable. But Putin keeps saying that the problem is because of the Ukrainians.
Do you know where this problem comes from? The main water intakes, which serve as the primary water supply system for the entire region, are located near the city of Sloviansk, in a territory that, unfortunately, is still currently controlled by the enemy forces. And this critical issue can be fundamentally resolved only within the old frame of reference. It will be fixed when this territory finally comes back under the full control of our heroic armed forces.
Let us just remind you that without the intervention of the Russian army and PMC, there would have been no war in Donbas at all. But Putin did not stop, and now in Donetsk, people are literally dying because of Russian rule. Russians, is this what you wanted? Do you see your president's victory?
And what do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments, leave a like, and stay up to date with the main news. It gets even more interesting next.